Hello and welcome to the Responsive Family Sleep Podcast. I'm your host, Kim Hawley, holistic sleep coach, lactation consultant, peaceful parenting educator, and mom. If you've ever felt overwhelmed by all the conflicting sleep info, frustrated with sleep information that just plain felt wrong, or searched desperately for a truly gentle and responsive sleep approach, then you are in the right place. In each episode, we'll be answering your most pressing baby and toddler sleep questions, busting those sleep myths, and helping you understand truly developmental, biologically normal baby and toddler sleep, plus encouraging you to trust your intuition along the way. Let's get started. Hello, and welcome back to the podcast. This week, we're going to be talking about a topic I get lots and lots of questions about, particularly when teaching my newborn sleep class. And that is, when can I get my baby on a schedule? And how, predictable of a schedule can I get, right? We want schedules. A lot of parents want schedules because it's easier to plan, right? Because we've been told they're necessary, because it feels like it brings a bit of order to what can feel very chaotic. And yet, we can't always get schedules. We can't always get sleep predictability, and that depends a bit on age and a bit on temperament. So let's unpack that a bit, right? Newborns do not have predictable sleep, right? They just don't. They don't have an established circadian rhythm. They don't have the maturity to have any sort of sleep predictability. Their sleep is just kind of all over the place and irregular, and that's the way it is. So trying to get a newborn in the first few months on a schedule is ineffective, and it is stressful, and it is not necessary, and it really doesn't have much of a benefit. Besides maybe some regular lighting cues to help establish circadian rhythm, right? Now, some babies start to show a bit of a rhythm around 3 months. And yet that rhythm is going to change a lot between 3 to 6 months. So, as great if you have a baby who's showing a bit of a rhythm, but don't get too attached to it because it is going to change fairly frequently, over the next few months. And then, by around 6 months, a lot of baby sleep gets a bit more predictable, but there's still going to be a decent amount of variation based on your little one's needs, and how the day is going and how long a given nap is going, and that's normal. And of course, the more naps you have, the more potential variability there is, right? Just because there are more naps to have more variation. So age is a piece, right? But so is temperament, because body rhythmicity is a genetic temperament trait. And so what that means is that some people's bodies tend to form patterns inherently, right? Better, easier, I don't think there's a value judgment here, easier than others. And so some babies just organically fall into really predictable feeding and sleep patterns. Just themselves, they do. And on the other end of the spectrum, some babies really, really do not have a lot of patterns in their bodily functions and their sleep and their eating. And that can be true up into adulthood. I mean, I have clients where they're like, we have a lot of trouble keeping a regular sleep schedule for ourselves. And so it's not surprising that our kid would, right? That's genetic. And so in the middle, of course, is your baby that can get into a bit of a rhythm, but needs to mature enough to get there. And then layer the third thing on top, which I didn't actually say at the beginning, but the third thing is just your own family's daily patterns. And some families have pretty, consistent, predictable rhythms, and some families have very irregular schedules. And to a certain extent, that's going to impact your baby, right? You cannot expect them to be consistent and predictable if you are not providing the right environment for them to be consistent and predictable, even if they theoretically could, right? And so that's kind of neither here nor there, because maybe it's not a big deal that you're not able to create that environment, or maybe it is creating problems, right? Maybe you can change it, maybe you can't. We don't have like a blank slate where we can totally reinvent our entire family system around our baby's sleep, and nor should we. But I do think it's worth remembering that, like, we set up the day, we set up the sleep opportunities, and some babies can sleep very easily on the go and others can't. And so there's factors here, right, that we impact as far as what the sleep times look like as things unfold. So when should you get your baby on a schedule, right? That's the question. And the answer is it depends, right? As a newborn, no, but a regular morning wake time and some regular day, night, like light darkness cueing, absolutely great. 3 to 5 months or 3 to 6 months, some babies might show you some predictability and like some rhythms, but that's generally like, oh my goodness, every 90 minutes of awake time, loosely speaking, they're ready for a nap. Or every 2 hours of awake time, they're ready for a nap. But it's not going to necessarily be clock predictability for a lot of babies. Older babies, things get a little bit more predictable for most of them, right? And it's also a little bit easier to step in and shape naps if you need a bit more predictability and find it's helpful. You don't have to, but there's times when that's helpful. But older babies, toddlers, right? Again, temperament. Are they inherently a more regular body rhythm type temperament, or are they not? Or are they somewhere in the middle? And then is your family setting them up for the kind of predictability that you want? And if they're not, then are we okay with just go with the flow and having a bit less predictability, right? That can be okay for a lot of babies, can cope just fine with that. Whether or not we need that predictability for good sleep depends on the big picture. It really does. Some babies go with the flow is great. They sleep fine. Everyone's good. No problem. Some parents are really, really structured and that works. Okay, fine. No problem. Some people go with the flow and it's not working, right? Then we want to problem solve. Some families are really structured and that's not working. Then we need to work on our flexibility, right? And most families just want something in the middle, where we have a bit more of a rhythm, bit less unpredictability, but not too structured, not too rigid, and not too all over the place. So there's your long answer. It's never simple, right? Can you get your baby on a schedule? At some point, probably. Yes, if that schedule is flexible, more of a rhythm, not super rigid. But really, first 3 to 6 months, we're really leaning into what they need and the irregularity and unpredictability that is their sleep and how immature that it actually is. Thank you for joining me today. I hope this episode left you feeling more informed, confident, and encouraged on your sleep journey. And just a reminder before you go that nothing in this episode is individualized to your specific sleep situation, nor is it to be taken as medical advice. Take what resonates, ignore what doesn't, and check with your healthcare provider about any medical concerns. Take a moment to subscribe to this podcast so that you'll never miss an episode. And take a moment to rate, review, or share an episode you love on social media. All of that helps parents just like you find me, this podcast, and this gentle and responsive sleep information. I'll see you next time.